Messianic Lab Radio.
Let it go, let it go, let the teardrops roll. Let it flow, to the waterfall. Go when you're low to the land of hope. It's a holiday. You can stay on the ocean shore. You can breathe in the seas when the desert calls. Take all that rain, let the sunlight face. Yeah, life is great. It's a lovely day. It's a lovely day. And lonely inside your soul's gonna fly away.
Hello and good afternoon. I hope you're having such a wonderful day. I'm Dr. Robin Gould. I'm glad you're here so we can have a little time together and talk about the portion a little bit and connect and get into some of the more deeper elements, I think, of from an attachment perspective of what the Father is trying to tell us. So I'm so glad you're here. I am excited to talk about today's topic. I really like talking about some of the more unusual things. So if you are new to the program, I want you to know that one of the major themes I was trying to focus on is attachment. And I always want you to remember that the future begins now. Whatever it is that you have been doing or thinking or not doing or not thinking, this is your moment to go to that next level or come down a level. Whatever it is that you need to do, the future begins now. So we can start. So I'm glad you're here. Okay, so today's Torah portion is in the book of Exodus. And so this is kind of exciting because it talks about the temple. And that's, to me, a really fascinating topic. Much of the temple eludes me, massively eludes me. And there's a reason for that. A reason I don't despise, and I think it's really interesting. Now, I'm going to tell you, when you want to learn about the temple, some of my favorite teachers are going to be like Dina Dye and Rico Cortez. These are, and Joseph Good, right? These are temple experts. These are the people that I go and listen to them and retain, 2.6% because it's so involved, but I get what I need and they are great teachers. Don't let my retention rate imply or impugn their teaching abilities. They are amazing. But anyway, I want to tell you something from what I'm given and what I feel like is my lane. And so here I go. I'm going to start by trying to make a connection for you here that I've always seen. And I might, butcher this a little bit because I'm working on this for a new book I'm writing. But I'm going to just get into, this sort of theme about the cherubim. Okay, so let me first actually back up even a little further. And I want to make a connection with Adam and Hava. So Adam and Eve. If you're Christians, you might not be familiar with these Hebrew pronunciations of their names or versions of their names. But anyway, this Adam and Hava are Adam and Eve. Okay. So I'm going to make this connecting point because I want to talk about something that's might even be a little controversial, but it is the way I read it. It is what I think it's saying. So bear with me and let's just look at it. Okay. So there's this idea of, just stay with me because I'm going to explain what I'm saying. It seems to me like there's a little bit of a shifting image of the way man becomes. Okay, so let me just back up here even more and just give you like my view of this. Okay. Sometimes I think when we read the Bible, like we want every pattern to walk on all fours, or we want every story to make exact sense. And a lot of it is not going to make a lot of exact sense because the Bible is written in another culture thousands of years ago in another language. We're very far removed in a lot of ways. And yet at the same time, humans are humans. and God is God. But sometimes I think that there is such a message, an impression that the Torah is trying to make to get inside your bone marrow so that you function and understand from an attachment perspective the massive objective the Father has to restore you. And that the whole Torah, the whole Bible, is a book about restoration. It's about the objective of God is to restore all things. So when I talk to you about this shifting image of man from the way he was originally made, I just bear with me, okay? So you might not agree with this, and you don't have to agree with this for you and I to carry on together and read the Bible, because ultimately all I know is Christ and him crucified. So we're all together. But sometimes people do have different ideas. And one of the things, and I'm not the only person who's going to share this perspective with you. I'm just one of many scholars, I would say, telling myself I'm a scholar. I have a doctorate, but it just always feels like there's so much I don't know. But anyway, but like I said, I'm not the only person with this perspective, but I just want to share. I want to go deeper into what my perspective is, which might be something you've not heard before, because this is what I feel like I've been given. So one thing is that when it talks about man being made, male and female, he made him. So there are people, I'm one of them, that do believe that when let's just go, I think this is Genesis 1:26. It says, "Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals and all over the creatures that move along the ground." So let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness. 2 words, right? That basically mean the same thing. When you look them up, it's like form for both. There's some repetitive redundancy there. I'm going to do a deep dive into that. I started doing a little of that today and didn't feel like I had enough to really do it justice. But what I find interesting about this is that he says, let's make male and female. So if I always ask people this question, right? If Hava is taken out of Adam, then where was she? So she was in Adam, right? She was in Hava, was inside Adam. So this version of the human is in the likeness of God, male and female. He created him. And that would be a plural being. Now, I know that sounds weird, and a lot of Christians are like really taken aback by that idea. But if you go into apologetics of the way the human body is made, this answers the question of why do men have nipples and what's this whole chromosome of XXXY. It really makes a lot of sense. To me, it's very scientific even. I get that. It doesn't challenge me or upset me, because I'm always looking at what is the message being told, being taught, being delivered. And if you've ever done the creation gospel or done anything with Dr. Alyssa Aylwine, and I highly recommend that you do, is she talks about this theme in the Bible that's, one becomes two to become one again, which is a sign of attachment, intimacy, connection, and transformation. So it's really exciting the way she is able to really unpack that through the days of creation and show you that theme chiastically and otherwise throughout the Bible. It's really interesting and exciting. Anyway, so this original human would be both made in the image of Elohim. Now, what I find really fascinating and interesting about that, and I love that, is actually, I'm going to set my timer, because you know what I do? I go over every now and then, and I don't want to do it too. Okay. Let me double check the time, and we will know how far. Okay. 8 minutes. So this idea is that Elohim is an us. He's a plural echad, right? He's one. But the ruach is in the feminine. And then you have the masculine, our Father, right? So here you're getting the nurturer, the comforter in the feminine, and the sovereign one, the king, the Father, right? And you even have the picture of that family. Because if Adam is made in Adonai's image, that would be male and female because she's in him. right? And I even take this a step further, that a woman has all of the ovums she'll ever have. And so technically that child's there too, in that image, which would be Father, Son, and Yeshua, Father, Spirit, and Son. So you'd have that idea, this whole encompassed idea. And the whole idea of a family is connected, coming together in humility and glorifying the Father. So when they're called very good, it's because they can produce life. You can learn more about that from the creation gospel. But the idea that to be made in Elohim's image would be inclusive of this masculine and this feminine and this son-serving picture. And so it's specific. So that would be like, what would that look like in a marriage? Well, when the man and woman become one flesh and they come together, she would approach him in humility, he would approach her in humility, and together they would make the right decision every time, because they would have each other's perspectives, which are different and supposed to be different. We are supposed to have a different angle, a different slant, a different idea. That is good. We can share information and make the right decision for the child that we love, right? That's the idea of what the family is it's a well-functioning unit. I don't like to call it that, but that's the family, right? So Adam and Chava, that being, Adam, that original plural being, that's the image of Elohim, which is all-inclusive, sees every angle, knows everything, is the king with the scepter, the nurturing mother, also the serving son that, right, died, and all that. So what's interesting, and the reason that I picked up on this about a shifting image of mankind, was that after they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So when Hava decided, and Adam, when they decided that they wanted to be like God and be the judge and judge good from evil, even though they are not qualified. Because when Hava is taken out of Adam, they are two separate people until they come together to make all the decisions, but they are still never the judge. And they were never the judge to begin with. But they were made in his image so they could rule over things that were animals, not people, but rule over the animals, the earth, the sea, stewards of what they were given. So when Hava comes out and then he presents her to Adam, how exciting. But that would be interesting because there's a shifting, but when they're together in the garden, there's no shift of the image because they are one. That's still the image of Hava, right? Of Elohim, right? Adam and Hava. But what's interesting is that they get sent away after they think they can be the judge, right? They're in this garden. They name the animals, they're tending the garden, and they had free will. They're given free agency to make their own choices. And in that garden, with that decision they made to try to be like God instead of the way that they were made, because of that, what happened was they were sent out of that garden. And the two cherubim were put with the flaming swords, right, to protect them from going back in, lest they eat off the tree of life. So I would say they weren't restored yet. And you don't want to eat off the tree of life. That wouldn't happen yet until they are restored. And that there were steps to restoration that still need to be done. But then it says in Genesis 5, verse 3, this is what kind of led me to this. When Adam had lived 130 years, he had a son in his own likeness, in his own image, and he named him Seth. So you're getting that same exact wording, likeness and image, but this time, instead of in the image of Elohim, Seth was made in Adam's image, which would mean he's male and just male. Very specifically just male. And so he was not, that doesn't mean he wasn't an image bearer of God to the extent that we are to strive to walk in righteousness, right? But there's something very specific that the text goes out of its way to say, that Seth was in the image of Adam. No longer was the human a plural being with everything. And they were also not in the garden. And they were prohibited from going back into the garden at this time, at this juncture. I would argue, and I would be very justified in classes I've sat in that have taught me this, that restoration is basically getting back to the garden. And I always call my attachment stuff garden language. It's about being restored out of the false self, the judge, all the false selves that we do to try to fix ourselves, because we're not really acknowledging that the one that our great physician is Elohim. Anyway, we're going to circle back to that, but that's where we start. Now, today's Torah portion would be Exodus 25:1 through 27:9, and we're just going to take a few sentences here, and I'll make a point that I feel like is really important to make. So it says here in verse 17 in chapter 25, or verse 17, just read a few sentences here. It says, "You shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half shall be its length, and a cubit and a half its breadth. And you shall make 2 cherubim of gold, of hammered work shall you make them, on the 2 ends of the mercy seat. Make 1 cherub on one end and the other on the other end, and of one piece with the mercy seat shall you make the cherubim on its 2 ends. And the cherubim shall spread out their wings above, overshadowing the mercy seat with their wings, their faces to one another. Toward the mercy seat shall the faces of the cherubim be. And you shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony that I shall give you." Oh, that just moves me. "There I will meet with you, and from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim that are on the ark of the testimony, I will speak with you about all that I will give you in the commandment for the people of Israel." Okay. So the cherubim, when you read this, you'll see these cherubim show up in these 3 places. So you have they're defending from entry into the Garden of Eden, right? So they're in one of the layers of the coverings of the Mishkan, and the veil. The cherubim are embroidered on the veil for the temple. And of course, there we have the mercy seat, right? So it's really sacred. This is such an interesting idea. But the fact that it harkens back to something at Genesis that keeps them out tells me it's an attachment message. It's an attachment principle. Everything about the garden is about attachment. It's about that original situation. And so it must be about restoration. Being securely attached is to be restored to all the goodness. To be restored is to be returned to anything is returned to its former state. So I want to talk about this. First, let's talk just really quickly about the pillars of attachment so I can make my point of what I'm trying to say to you. Because I would like you to connect with this Torah portion. Some people feel like they really don't connect with it because it's like, this is weird. There's like showbread. There's all this stuff. What is this? Even people that have toured, virtual temples, they even still feel like it just seems so mysterious. But I want you to connect with something. I really actually want you to connect with the mystery, to be honest. But there's 3, what I would say, and this is in my new book. I'm going to read it as I wrote it, actually, the 3 pillars of attachment. So for healthy attachment, by simple definition, is knowing and living the reality that you and others are, number 1, capable, number 2, deserving, and number 3, enriched by the relationship. So these 3 pillars are inextricably linked and foundational for healthy attachment to form and exist. So here are the elements. So to govern healthy attachment, the elements that govern them would be number 1, trust. Number 2, compassion. Number 3, empathy. So you have to have those things to make the pillars stand, right? And these components must be present consistently and simultaneously and be active at all times, like consistently, for healthy attachment. So now the effect would be that these relationships are healthy. They allow for growth, vulnerability, exploration, and the goal would be fruit, and the joy of the Lord, right? To intimacy. Okay. So let's break that down a little bit and think about how this relates to our relationship with our Father, right? This is important. This is really important. Attachment to our Father is outside of religion. Though there are elements of religion that can help us with some of this stuff, some of it doesn't help, right? We've all seen things that go too far and become the thing instead of God being the thing, right? So the idea of capable, what would capable mean in a relationship? So a relationship that I have that would need that I would want to see if it was healthy. Is each party in this relationship of the two people, are they both capable of having this relationship? There are people that you love and adore, and you won't leave them nor forsake them. But as far as is it a healthy attachment, this relationship? Well, if that other person or you are not capable of investing constructively in the relationship, you're not going to have a secure attachment. Not because that person's a horrible person, but because they lack the ability. Okay, so that's not going to be a secure attachment. It doesn't mean you're not attached to them and you don't love them, but it means that the relationship isn't going to function as a healthy relationship with all the parts. It's just going to have part of the parts. It's going to have the love, the most important part. It's going to have that. But what we're talking about is a functional relationship. Okay, the second pillar, right, is deserving. Does each person deserves the relationship? Meaning value. Does each person know that they deserve a good, healthy, connected relationship? Do they each value themselves? Do they each know that they deserve love and compassion and empathy and all of those elements I mentioned before? Now, the word deserve can be a very triggering word for a lot of people because they don't feel that in a relationship with God that we deserve any of it, that he just gives it to us. Now, I challenge that profoundly. I have a fundamentally different view because I understand attachment and I understand also justice and I understand free will. And that dog does not hunt when we say that we don't deserve it. Because if our Father is a just God and he only acts justly, he would never give love to something that didn't deserve it. It would be unjust to do so. Everything he does is justice in his mind. That would imply absolutely deserving. And I use this example very commonly when I try to explain this to people. I've been in church settings and there's a woman, she's holding her little baby. And I said, do you see this woman and her baby? Does that baby deserve his mother's love? And like nobody hesitates. So like, of course that baby deserves love. Well, then why wouldn't you deserve love? Well, the baby hasn't sinned yet. It didn't matter. If the baby is 16 and sins, do they deserve the mother's love? Yes. She doesn't need to support what he's doing wrong. But that's his mother. Now, deserving love is something God made us. He made us good. So, deserving love, humanism says, I feel valuable because I tell myself I am and I believe myself. That's not what I'm talking about. Humanity, as God made you, isn't an ism, it's an id. There's a big difference. An id is a state of being, an ism is an idea, philosophy. We're not diving into philosophies, we're in a relationship. God made humanity, and he made humanity deserving of love because he made them. So we believe we're valuable because he says we're very good, and we believe him. Our humility comes in putting our faith in the words of God. Now, if our words override his and he says he made us very good, but we're not, we can't override him. We can't say he's wrong just because that's false humility and it's a lie. We have to believe him when he said he made us good. Our value is not accessible to us to touch, to tamper, to elevate, to detract from. It is implicit because the creator who made you, God is good. God is very good. God made you good. You deserve love. You deserve what he has chosen to give you as a just God. I want you to rely on that. And I don't want you to credit yourself that I just keep telling myself as a positive affirmation and I start believing it. No, we don't affirm ourselves. The Father affirms us and we listen to the Father. We don't create affirmations. We receive them and believe them. So if you're saying it, I'm good, the Father made me good, you're repeating what he already told you and you're putting your faith in him. There's a difference in those two things. So anyway, now the other part is the relationship enriching to both parties? This is another big one that can be very triggering for people. And depending on your religious background, this might be a new concept for you or one that you just want to shut me off right now because you just cannot believe this. But both parties have to, like we said, be capable of investing constructively in the relationship, deserving, knowing their value, that they both deserve the relationship. And we're going to touch back on capable again. I'm going to circle back to that, but I want to talk about being enriched. So both parties being enriched. So if both parties are benefiting from the relationship, that's a healthy relationship. It's not just one party benefits. Okay, so how is a relationship if they say, well, I don't really like our relationship, but I'm in it. You know, I throw you a bone and show up and I'll help you. I personally get nothing out of it. That sounds like the martyr, right? You hear about that. I get nothing out of that relationship, but I just, that's not going to be one of those relationships that's got all the moving parts for intimacy. Because we're not talking about love. We're not talking about care. We're talking about intimacy. To have intimacy, you need these things. Now, capable of investing. We are not capable of investing as much as God the Father because he is the creator. But he made us capable to constructively participate in this relationship and to invest in it. We are capable. You are capable of doing it in your way. You can be challenged in different ways. You are still capable of investing and participating and enjoying and being a part of this relationship with God. He doesn't make you unable because he deals with you in his way. Okay, so sorry, you hear that lawnmower out there. It's always at the wrong time. Okay, so that leads me into, we're talking about intimacy. We're talking about like this idea of like, what is the temple? Now, I'm not going to go into that. There are teachers that do that. But in a nutshell, the temple is the place where he dwells with his people, where this intimacy is formed. And if you look at the temple just like from a rudimentary like sort of way, like you have the outer courts, which would kind of be like your body, and the holy place would be like your soul, like you're getting in there, and then the holy of holies would be like your spirit, that place only God can go. You know what I mean? So I mean, obviously the temple, there's a anatomy portion to this. There's many layers to understanding what the temple is. But what I want to kind of like concentrate on today is the idea of how weird the temple is and how strange it is, because I think the temple is something that people see as one of those things that I love really connecting with God until I learn about the temple. And then I'm just really turned off and stressed and upset. And it just seems strange and weird. And like, I just feel like I'm so disconnected from God because number one, I don't know enough. So I must not be a very good investor in the relationship. Or when I learn it, it just gets weirder the more I learn. And there's like sprinkling of blood and furnishings and like You go to the right if you're joyful, left if you're mourning. There's different things happening. There's priests that are born into it. There's just this whole idea of like ashes and the way it's dealt with. And oh, it's complicated. It's just, there's rituals. It's like there's a seat with these cherubim. What? Okay. It's weird, right? It's like strange. And I would even say the whole Torah is strange. The whole Bible is a really, really strange book with strange stories. And you know me, I don't ever shrink back from that. I don't ever try to tell people, man, if you just understood it, it wouldn't even be strange to you. I'm going to tell you, the more I understand it, the stranger it gets. But here's why it gets stranger and more cool. And I do make more connections and I understand parts of it more. But think about it this way. The temple is ritual. It's got very specific things that you do. And that's interesting because it's not like, it doesn't come naturally to you. It's not like you would naturally go in and do those things. I watched this show. It's called The Great British Baking Show. And they have this, these 3 challenges. They do like this signature where they all bake the same thing with their own spin on it. Then they have this thing in the middle of, it's called the technical challenge, where they all have to do the exact same thing, given very minimal instructions and just figure it out and see who wins. And then they have a showstopper where they just are given a theme and they all run with it. But the technical is always interesting because it's like covered in this little tablecloth and they have all the ingredients they need and just like enough instructions to just make it. But you're like, what is this? It's usually something they're not that familiar with. It's always, to me, kind of like interesting. Like the temple is sort of like a technical challenge for me. Like I'm not sure what I'm doing. And it's just so strange and mystical and just, it's like, what? Now, when you go back to attachment, capable. We are capable of loving God because he loved us first. So yes, we are capable. We love him because he first loved us. So we get that, right? But he is so much smarter than we are and more complex. And he created everything. He created DNA. He created galaxies. He created the earth. He created you. He created feelings. He created color, scent, sound, music, emotion. I just look around this room, symbols, language. He created people and inspired them to do the things they do. And so the temple reflects, I believe, that this being that made you, your father, is like way above you. And that shouldn't scare you. That should comfort you. I definitely want to say this. You know, when I got my doctorate, I remember just having this, I was just awestruck that I was one of the people holding these degrees and I knew all the things I didn't know. It was like almost stressful because of like, just had this illusion that everything is a certain way. But then when you are at the top of that food chain, you're like, there's a lot of things I don't know. So I don't really know what this means. It means I guess I know what I know. And that's all I know. Well, the temple is like reflective of something so far beyond the way we think. And it's more than a technical challenge. It's like exciting. It's mysterious. There's always layers to learn. But God is so above us. We are not equal to him that we should understand all this. And that should be nice and comforting because if you're a 2-year-old and you are hungry, you're not going to another, like say you're in preschool in your little babysitter group or whatever, you're like 2 or 3 and you're like playing Legos and you're sort of hungry or you have some other need. You don't go up to another 2 or 3-year-old and be like, take me to the bathroom or I want chips. You're not going to do that. You know what you're going to do? You're going to look around to find one of those creatures, one of those beings, one of those humans that's older and bigger and taller and knows more and does stuff you don't understand because they're the ones that know where the chips are and are the ones that can take you to the bathroom. You're going to look around for something more complex. You're not going to look for a peer. Okay? We can bond with our peers and enjoy our peers and get support from our peers. But as far as getting our needs met in terms of higher order things, we don't go to peers. So the temple demonstrates that You have got a father that is so above you in terms of his intelligence that he will take care of you, that he's capable of taking care of you. Do you know how important it is to know that your father is capable of taking care of you? Well, the best way to be that is to picture being a 2-year-old. And just think when you're like a toddler. And just think of if you could ever just imagine you're a toddler. Try, you know how you have kids and you see life through your kids' eyes and you're like, oh my goodness. I remember my little boy when he was old enough to sit in the front seat for the first time when he was bigger. And the dashboard, I remember him just looking at the dashboard and he was like, it impressed him. I mean, had been driving for years. A dashboard was nothing to me. But you think about that feeling like, oh my gosh, I get to see all the buttons and the levers and she's driving. And he was really impressed. I remember him just watching me and just like being impressed. And it was very easy for me. But what does that do? That instills in him a sense of security that I'm going to take him somewhere in the car that he needs to go. He doesn't have to do it. He's being taken care of, or as they would say in the South, carried somewhere. I'm from the North. We didn't use that word, but he's being carried somewhere. He's being taken care of. Somebody smarter than him, bigger than him, that owns a car, that has more than he does, that can meet his needs, is going to meet his need, you know? And even like as an adult, right? If you're not a pilot and you walk, you know, when you're boarding a plane and you're not a pilot and you are walking and you are waiting in line and you happen to, the cockpit doors open and you happen to kind of look in and you just look at that, like, I get this such a strange feeling whenever I look at the cockpit and I look at all the instrumentation they use and the way they're doing all their checks and they're using words I don't know. And it's almost like it just feels like there's a noise in there I'm not familiar with. This whole thing just feels like magic, or like, I don't know, I'm in a flying carpet. I just don't know how to operate these things. But these two people, they know how to operate this. So what do? I sit in my seat. I trust that they're trained and I let them carry me somewhere. I get taken care of. But it's very mysterious to me. So what do? I think about these pilots and I say, these people know things I don't know. And you see, if we look at God that way, like this temple is very, very weird. It's because I'm 2 and I'm in the car and I have no idea what these buttons are for, but my dad does. And he's going to take me where we need to go and we're going to get there safely. And so it's just that sort of idea that if we don't understand it, that's intimacy. Because we can trust that our needs are met, because we're the weaker party and God is the stronger party and he meets our needs. Okay? Right? He is the one that gives us strength and comfort and meets our needs and takes care of us. So, the temple is to me a very tangible way of remembering that rituals are important. And I'm a big fan of rituals. And of course, the feasts are rituals, right? It's an outline of the future. He doesn't just leave you dangling, not knowing anything. He says, here's at least a syllabus. But as far as what books you're going to read and what we're going to talk about in the lectures, you're going to show up and find out. But here's the outline. And here are class dates. Show up. I'm going to show you. You're going to see what you need to see on that day. So he doesn't leave you unprepared, right? Yom Kippur comes around. It's like prepare, repent, be ready for this day. And stuff's going to happen. And stuff happens on these days. Events occur on the feasts. Because he doesn't just leave you completely, dangling and every day is the same. He gives you a solar week to count Shabbat. He gives you a lunar month to count the months. He gives you the feast cycle on the agricultural calendar of how to do these things. And he gives you ways by which to measure. And it's exciting and it's really different. And it's not the way that we would operate. But when we get to go into some sort of system and there's a ritual, everything has a ritual. Going to the grocery store is a ritual. You walk in, you grab a cart, you wipe off the handle, you go up and down. A lot of people have their own way. They start at one end of the store or the other, but this is the way that they do it. And they buy these things first and these things last. And then they do this and they might say hi to the butcher and they might not. It might be something that's your ritual or whatever. and then you're going to stand in line, and then you're going to wait, and then you're going to put the stick on the aisle that separates the groceries, and you're going to have pleasantry talk with the person in front of you, and you're all going to roll your eyes at each other when they run out of tape, because it happens every single time I ever go to the grocery store ever. And then you're going to put your stuff on and ring it, and you're going to have appropriate conversation. You're going to push your pin in with your thing. You're going to hear a beep. Everything is ritual. And when people move, they look forward to rituals they know, right? So I moved to Florida. I used the same bank, that I used in Tennessee. It was kind of like reminding me of going back to Tennessee. So I'd had this little pause there in Vermont. Going back to rituals, things that we remember, and they evoke in us some sort of our memory. So when they would go into the temple, and they had the worshipers, and they had all the furnishings, and everything is just like sacred and different and nothing like your regular day, you're going to go in and you're not going to have regular thoughts. You're going to give yourself permission to go into this more mysterious part of you, this part of you that's like, what? You're not going to be like, every time I go, I sit at a baseball game, this is how I experience it. This is what I eat. This is what I do, or it's just a regular day. I took a walk. I did whatever. No, you go to the temple and everything is like set apart and sacred and strange and symbolic. And so it's going to bring about in you different feelings, different biological things. Like, it's really important, I think, to remember that God created our bodies to respond to things, to hunger, to thirst, to heat, to cold, to loneliness, right? Like all these things are all incorporated as He made complete people, as holistic organisms, to be His image bearers, to walk through a life that He can watch and enjoy and participate with us, and just it's to Him, He benefits. When we walk into the temple and we're just like, could you imagine? I bet He's so happy. Like, look, see, like I was with my son when he was looking at the dashboard. I'm thinking, this is such an adventure for him. I'm right. But the temple is where He would show up and dwell in between these cherubim. So I think the message is you might not be in the garden, but you're with me. I'm the garden, and I come to you, that sanctuary that will be in their midst. And this is part of that process of restoration. I feel like that's a message that's kind of in the wind here, that we shouldn't forget. That this is a message of like those cherubim in the mercy seat. And in the Ark of the Covenant is the testimony. My heart for you, the way that we commune, this special, secret, sacred place. I just think that's awesome and amazing. And it's not something that should make us feel disconnected from Him, but like in awe of Him, and safer because we don't get it. Because we have a parent that does, and that He is letting us in little by little. We get wisps and whispers of these secrets as we learn, we go, as we're ready. The stuff, I feel like it gets in. And so when our image shifted, and because we were one, we were that plural human, and then we were separated, man and woman, and we come together in humility. But then we were no longer in the garden, so Seth was made in Adam's image. The message is we're on the road to restoration, because the garden exceeded the abilities given free will of the people. Now, the Father didn't set people up for failure. He set people up for choice. He wanted something out of it too, I believe. Now, I'm speaking from my opinion. Okay. I believe that God the Father made Himself vulnerable to rejection on purpose and gave you free agency to reject Him so He could enjoy the relationship with you. He will restore all things. He says He will. But I think that He put you in the garden, He gave you free will, and it exceeded the abilities of the human. Now, that wasn't God setting you up for failure. It's God saying, here's you in the garden. And you're given the choice for this, and oh, you choose it, so now you can't go there. So like let's make an example in our life, right? Like we limited technology back. Remember when Game Boys were really popular way back, but when our kids were younger, we had given our kids a Game Boy, and I swear I didn't see that child for 2 days. Like, where's the child? Like, he's in the Game Boy, literally like in the Game Boy. It's like, okay, that Game Boy is exceeding his ability to function as a family member, and that's got to go. So I took the Game Boy away, and then we allocated it little by little until they had more control. But boy, that took over, right? That was like not good. And so we made that choice because we felt that being a part of the family was more important than, endless banal hours wasting time on a Game Boy. So that's called parenting, right? If something exceeds our child's abilities, we're a good parent. We're going to remove the situation from the child until they demonstrate that they can handle it. But I think the father understands we're just not ready to handle that. And he knew that, but he wants to show us, but I'm going to make you anew. I'm going to restore you back to that place of that garden. You have sovereignty over that garden and you can handle it. You can be, because you can be around that tree, and you can even eat off that tree because you'll be in a restored state. But right now you're going to work and toil until and enjoy and celebrate and grieve and mourn and go through all of these things in life. You're going to go through all of that by design with me. I will travail with you. I will send myself to you and walk this out with you. And so that's what a good parent does. Because the parent, when we removed the Game Boy from my child, we weren't punishing the child. We were trying to protect the child. We were trying to keep him safe from his choice, because we were smarter than he was and we knew what he needed. We knew that was not what he needed. It wasn't bearing good fruit. And so, no, he can't have that now. And so our Father is a good Father. He doesn't punish us. He restores us. And sometimes in the steps of restoration, we experience deprivation. We experience discipline, refining. We have to go through things. Ecclesiastes talks about, like, what's the point of everything? It's all vanity. When something's limitless, it's like got no value to you. One of the things in the earliest part of our marriage, David and I, we always go back to those days, because I remember, you just didn't even have anything, and you just had like Chinese food once a week, and how fun that was as a little family. And just like those are, it's one of the best ways to ever start out anything, is to really have to earn what you're getting and then just really enjoying it. And that's how you really start understanding like joy and accomplishment and victory and like work and reward. I mean, you just get that, right? That's what gardening is. That's what agriculture is. You plant, you sow, you till, and you reap, and then you eat, and you're proud. When you ever garden, people love, they planted these vegetables and ate them. And that's just by design, that you feel good about it. And that when you work really hard, you sleep really well. And all of these things are just part of this human experience, that all of life is worship, right? All of these things are about being image bearers of God. And all of this is walking toward restoration. This is the way he wanted it to be. And so we are doing it. And we go through hard times. We're going through a hard time right now, globally, in your state, in your hometown, within your family, right? We have this plague that we're dealing with, and it's really difficult, and different people have different opinions. So of course that adds to the separation that we have. And you know what? The Father's going to intervene and restore. He's going to correct. He's going to discipline, refine, do whatever he needs to do. But he tells us about the temple. He takes us to this mystical mystery. Like, don't misunderstand the word mystical there. But this whole idea, which I don't mind that word, but I know it triggers some people because they might think I'm going down a road I'm not. But I just think this whole idea of these beautiful, like made of one solid piece of gold and lit with oil, and like the showbread and the the labor, like all these things, all these elements that are incorporated, the incense, the guilt offering, the friendship offering, like the sin offering, like all these things are so prescribed and specific and interesting. And it's just, I just think it's, and it's interesting that the people, the Levites who didn't worship the golden calf were the ones charged with this, but then they're born into it. So it's never an argument like, who did you pick to be um, the priest? Well, guess what? We draw lots, but the priesthood, well, they as a group didn't worship the calf. So by nepotism, because that solves a lot of arguments of who we're picking these people. If you think about it, what a great parent. It's like, nope, whoever's born first gets the bigger bedroom. It's like not up for grabs. It's not because you're any this or whatever. I feel like the father just is such a problem solver that he solves problems before they're problems, because then they weren't arguing over who's the priest. Because then when there was a fraudulent priest, which I would say Herod was, it's like uproar, because when people are elected falsely into governing positions, it upsets people. So this was one way. It was like a monarchy of its own, of the way that people were put into these positions to run the temple. And it's a huge responsibility. A really, really a huge responsibility. I remember one time my husband and I were in Israel and we were visiting Shiloh, and we were there. And I'd been there like a bunch of times, but this was my husband's first trip to Israel. And so we wanted to go there, but it was like so freezing. It was absolutely bitter, bitter cold. And none of us really expected it to be that cold because the weather just kind of turned. And so when we got there, no one was quite, I mean, I had dressed okay, but not everybody was always dressed like for this freezing day. And you think back to the fabrics and technology that they had back then when this, when the tabernacle was, and they probably felt pretty similar to the way we felt that day. And I remember just thinking, walking from the top to the bottom and all the things, it just was cold and hard, and it was a lot of suffering. And it was like, boy, to even do this was just so much work. So just kind of a reality check of all of these things, like with the temple. So when you see the temple, and you think of the cherubim on this precious seat where the heart of God's inside, because it's how he and us, it's how he says who he is and how we can function with him and how we can walk through and be safe on this earth. Like that's his way. These cherubim protected us from the garden of going back to that Game Boy when it would ruin our family life. And he's got cherubim on the mercy seat to protect you there. It was over the rules, right over where he speaks about the rules, which is where the heart of the Father is to protect his children, to guide his children. And so I really would love you to get that vision of the temple, that these are attachment rituals, that this is meant to bring you close to him and to realize he's capable. He is capable of being your God. He is capable of being the only God, the most high God. He can do all these things. And this beautiful, mysterious place with all these strange things, it's just, he's the pilot. It's the dashboard of the plane, and you've never flown it. And you're not going to take yourself where you need to go. He is. So let me turn the chat on. And it looks like I got a little comment here. Oh, I got a lot of comments. And I'm only on, there's my mouse. Isn't that my 10-minute mouse? Okay. Let's see who we've got here. We have got Bobby Hall. Oh, good to see you. Nice to see you, Bobby. Shalom. Good to have you back. Shalom. Rhonda Carter. Hi, love this. Hi, Rhonda. Love you. Hey, Aspen, howdy. So I love how people are talking to each other. Language, culture, and context always. Bobby, that is so true. Here they are connecting with each other. So cool. Let's see. Bobby Hall. I've had Zuckerbook for years, just never used it. Sounds great. Okay, I'll try when I stop. Let's see. I'm trying to think. They're talking to each other. Okay, so good. Hey, travel mercies to you, Bobby Hall. You're traveling. He got ahead of most of the bad weather from Seattle. Go down to Florida and hide. That's where I am. I'm hiding. And Bobby says hi to Rhonda. Okay. Aaron, the priest, approved it though. Yes, that's true. Yes, he did it. Aspen, you're right. Aspen, excellent point. Yes, Aaron did approve it. I love Aaron though. He's so Aaron. I get Aaron because remember when they melted down all of the, and comment as you want, as they melted down all of the gold to make the calf, and Aaron's kind of like, I don't know, just all of a sudden this calf just got made. Like he was like approving that they would make this, but the Levites themselves hadn't participated. Isn't that funny how the leadership, I'm so glad you made that point. I'm going to tell you this one little story actually. Oh, Bobby Hall, you're truck drivers. Oh, I love truck drivers. Good for you. So this one quick story that I just think of Aaron every time I think of this, but I have this, my mother's sister and my cousins has a daughter. And I remember this story. It's like one of my favorite stories. And it always makes me think of Aaron. I mean, I make connections because I'm one of those peculiar people, but she was probably two. She had, I'm sorry, I have terrible allergies because I just mowed my lawn, as you could hear. She had taken a permanent marker and like drawn over her arms. And of course, spent a lot of time doing it. There was a lot of marks. And her mother went in and said to her, let's say her name was Susan, right? I don't want to give up names, but she said, Susan, what have you done to your arms? And she just like looked down and she was like, no idea. Like, I am just as surprised as you are. It was that story is just so funny, but that was kind of like the way I felt like Aaron was. It was like, this is a shock to me too. but no, Aaron had approved it. And this is an example too of leadership, right? Leadership as a dynasty comes with all of its problems too. I mean, maybe it solves the problem of choice, but it doesn't solve the problem of just people being very errant. And that's where, of course, our leader is Yeshua, right? Our Adonai is our one high God, and no leader is ever going to have everything right. Every leader is unteachable in one way or another, so that we don't really ever rely on our teachers. They're just people, and the Father gives them some stuff. I'm sharing with you stuff I feel like I get. I can't promise you it's right. I can say that I study it pretty hard. Then God had them grind it and drink the gold. I know I would not enjoy that. Talk about heavy metals, right? So yeah, that was such a good point so I just give you things that I feel like I understand. So as I'm reading things, I'm always reading things through an attachment lens. So I'm always going forward in attachment. Like, how is the Father restoring people with this action? How does this demonstrate that he's capable even when they're not? But he decides they're capable of what he wants in the relationship. They're able. They're deserving. And these are these pillars of attachment, and they're both enriched by the relationship. So I want to close on this point. The Father doesn't just throw you a bone and deign down to stoop to your lowness because you're disgusting and he's just nice to you because he's good. That view that so many religions promulgate really triggers me. It's very damaging because not only is it not at all true, it damages people's view of themselves, which actually damages their view of God, because he made people very good and he wouldn't create junk, and he has never created a junk human ever. And so you are worth his love because he made you. And because he made you, you can't take that worth away from yourself and you can't increase it. I want you to find comfort in that. I want you to find humility in that. Do you see how that is? You're very important. You're his whole world. But be humble. It's just because he made you. And so you walk in the value that has been given you because it's implied. It's implicit. This is implicit value that you have. And so Google Earth, Mount Sinai, or bell at Laws, and you can see the golden calf altar and so much more. It's amazing God saved this for us to see. I know, I love when there's things in the earth that you can actually see. And just even, yeah, I love that. There's so much. Sometime I'm going to share some pictures from some of our Israel trips about things we saw. And it's really an amazing feeling to be like, this is where this person was and this happened. And it's really exciting and really, really interesting. And yes, thank you. Yes. Oh, well, thank you. I hope that you guys enjoyed this today, because I want you to know that when God says to love him with everything that's in you, do it. And when he says to love your neighbor, do it. And when he says to love your neighbor yourself the way you love your neighbor, do it. Those three things are the pillars of attachment. Love yourself, value others, and know that your needs are completely met and you are worshiping God. We don't worship each other. We love God with everything in us. We love our neighbor as ourselves, which is as people. But we understand that that is how we attach to the Father, and he has created his dwelling place that's beyond our comprehension, so that we can remember he's the pilot. He flies the plane. He is not only trained, he invented the plane and the sky. And we can be safe, and we are safe, and we love him because he loved us. We don't take pride in that. We take joy in that. And the joy of the Lord is our strength. And we're strong when we know that our God takes care of us. Our God meets our needs. Our God is big. He's huge. He's amazing. He made everything. We don't understand it all. That does not make anything about the Torah, does not render it as a book that isn't quite awesome. It makes it even more awesome. And it always reminds us that there is a search. And there's even numbers in the Bible that connect to meaning, so that you could even be, massively autistic or some sort of number-based cognitive function, and you're still going to get there because he speaks to us and he loves you. Yes, you. And so I want you to just really wrap your mind around that. Don't let the temple scare you. Don't let the stuff that seems like you don't understand it because it seems crazy, or it seems like strange, or it just seems like something that just must be wrong. That person probably shouldn't have been killed or whatever. Don't ever, ever doubt that book. Doubt our interpretation of it for sure, and continue to search and seek. But you are safely attached and embraced. You are that sheep that the Father has slung on his shoulder. He went out and got you, and he brought you back to the freshest, greenest pasture, and he will never leave you nor forsake you. So I want you to just keep that image. So every time you see something in the temple that you don't understand, I want you to study it out for sure. Enjoy the search, but rejoice that you're never really going to get to the bottom. This is a God that's made the ocean and gave the shape to each little tiny grain of sand. This is a very big God, and he has got you. He's got you right in his hand. You are his world. He made you that way. You deserve it. You're worthy. He made you that way. Our humility is to say, yes, you're right. I am not going to say that my standards of worth are higher than yours, God. I'm going to agree with you. And you said that you love me, and that I should love myself and love my neighbor. So that message is often lost in religion. And I want to bring it back. I want to bring that message back to you, because I want you to move forward. And I want you to not just, be safe. I actually want you to know that you're safe. So just remember always that the future begins now. Bye.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
Let it go, let it go, let the teardrops roll, let it flow, you the water.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
Oh, it's a holiday. You can stay on the ocean shore. You can breathe in the seas from the desert.
Hello, this is John Craig.
And this is Sandy Craig. And we want to invite you to the Feast of Tabernacles 2021. What's it called? Roar from Zion. And it is September 20th through the 28th at Lake Paladuro, Spearman, Texas. And you don't want to miss it.
That's right. So Life of Worship Ministries and Messianic Lamb Network would like to invite you and your family to join us at the 2021 Feast of Tabernacles. Theme is, I'm going to say it again, Roar from Zion.
And it's going to be a great time of fellowship as we gather together as the body of Messiah Yeshua to honor our King. In addition to this, it's a beautiful setting, and we're working to provide a week that serves to edify the body as well as honor Yahweh and promote an atmosphere of worship in spirit-led.
So we will have some great speakers like Dr. Eddie Chumney, of course, John and Sandy Craig, that's us, and more, and along with nightly worship and teaching, there will be special workshops ranging from archery, crafts, dance, special teachings, as well as children.
And you're going to be able to take advantage of the campground's outdoor activities like volleyball, hiking, fishing, frisbee golf, and
So in addition to these events, we will have a mikvah and marriage renewal for those who are interested. So we have several different options as far as registration in order to meet everyone's needs.
There's that full-time rate covering the entire Sukkot celebration for adults and kids, as well as
Weekend rates for the final days, Friday to Sunday.
or even a single night or day rates for that first Monday through Thursday. You know what? We have options. We have options for you.
Yeah, so lodging, you can have tent spaces, RV sites. We have a discounted rate at a local hotel. So
anything, you got it. And we want you to join us. In fact, we can't wait until you are there with us.
So join us for the Feast of Tabernacles 2021, Roar from Zion. And if you have any questions, please contact us.
And you can go to www.lifeofworshipamarillo.org and you can get that information or email us at low@lifeofworshipamarillo.org.
All right.
We'll see you there.
That's right. See ya.
More so than ever before, we have a task laid out before us, the task of getting to know God. The underlying theme of all the scriptures is, I am, meaning that our God exists. He radiates his influence among us, and he shines his glory around us so that we see his way. He doesn't need us in order to exist. As we personally develop a relationship with our God and get to know Him intimately, we get to know His will and the answer to why we are alive at such a time as this. Hi, I'm Susan Hoogie of Messianic Morning Prayers. Join with Messianic Lamb Radio as we develop a very close relationship with our God, King, Judge, Creator, and Father. Let's work with our Father and learn to be doers of His word, for this blesses Him, and His face will shine upon us.
You're listening to Messianic Lamb Radio.